the recording now, and then we'll jump on in because we got 2 minutes. So we'll jump on in and say hello to everyone.
Sounds good.
Because I know there's some people waiting.
There we
And we'll
go.
just give it 1 more minute before we kick off and get underway. But thank you all so much for joining. I'm going to jump in and do the obligatory quick photo. So that's done. Cool. Okay.
I wasn't ready for the photo, man.
Oh, okay.
Look, a
I
good
can
deal.
do it again. I can do it
Hey, we
again.
got to
All right, here we go.
smile. Gotta get
All
a
right, ready?
smile.
1, 2, 3. Perfect.
There we
Thank
go.
you, gentlemen. All right, we've got 1 more minute here, and we'll let some people jump in, and then we're going to jump straight into it. We've got a few guests on different time zones. Jason, are you on the same time zone as Derek and I?
I'm technically
It's
on
central, right?
CST currently.
Okay,
So
Yes,
it's
cool.
yes.
it's
Same
it's 12
time
o'clock
zone.
for me now.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
it's
So
12.
we're
Okay.
Oh, so you're on, okay. So
It's like
you're on
mountain time.
CST, we're on CDT. Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird because for half the year I'm on standard CST, and then because we don't observe daylight savings here for the half the year, I'm on some weird Mexico City time zone.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the same as Mountain Time, which is interesting. So, and Simon, I know it's late for you, so thank you very much for staying up and joining. I'm going to get us started. It's 1 o'clock CT on the dot. So thank you all so much for joining. I'm joined by some absolute experts in this B2B space today. I'm very, very excited for it. I'm going to profess this early on. Usually I jump on these webinars and I have a lot to say and a lot of knowledge to share. But today, not so much. But I have definitely assembled the Avengers of the B2B space, I feel. So I'm very excited about being able to introduce them to you. So thank you all so much for joining. As we were just discussing earlier, there's speakers here on all different time zones. So I'm sure there's a lot of audience members here who are also on all different time zones. So I just want to thank you all for joining. So today we're talking about the road to B2B excellence, what opportunities exist, what strengths brands have to be able to make a lasting impact. This is obviously brought to you by Growave, but also Derek Booth from Justuno. We've got Simon Blake from Velstar and Jason from Greenwood Consulting, Jason Greenwood. As I said, all people that I'm lucky enough to call friends and some really great colleagues and voices in this space. So what I'll do is I'm going to hand over to everyone to sort of introduce themselves. Then we're going to jump into some questions. At the very end, once we've gone through the slide content, you're going to get a lot of value out of this today. Now, if you cannot stay for the whole of the webinar, you will receive a recording of this, or if for whatever reason you weren't able to attend, you will receive a recording. And the way that I like to do these webinars, I think this is our fifth one now. I really love it when the audience kind of engages and asks questions when there is a particular sort of topic that stands out to them. But just remember, we will be doing a little bit of Q&A if time allows at the end. And you'll also be able to connect with everyone on this call at a future date as well. So we'll share all the information on how to do that at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Derek, to introduce yourself first. Then we'll pass over to Simon and then Jason at the end, and then we'll jump into the questions.
Awesome. Thanks for that intro, Joe. What's going on, everybody? My name's Derek. I'm the Director of Sales and Partnerships at Justuno. Justuno is a on-site conversion automation tool that helps convert more of your website visitors into actual leads and sales. I've been at the company now for about 7.5 years and also in this space for about 7.5 years. I live here in Austin, Texas with Joe. Joe and I are really close mates. And, in my free time, I do have some hobbies and some passions. And I'm actually an avid Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitor. And I compete in competitions all across Texas. So it's nice to meet everybody. And I'm really excited to talk on this topic today.
Awesome. Thanks, Derek, and really appreciate having you on. I think this is Justuno's second webinar that we've done together, and I know we've done a lot of things in the past, but yeah, thank you so much for joining. I very much appreciate it, and I'm sure the audience is going to get a lot of value from it. Simon, can you give us a little bit of a background? I know you've got a quite extensive B2B background, very strong background in terms of just digital, web, everything in general. So I think the audience is going to get a lot of value from what you bring today. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joe. You've bigged me up really well there, which is great. So yeah, hello everyone. I'm Simon Blake. I'm the Client Services Director here at Velstar, based in the UK. We do have Velstar in the US as well, which is why we're a partner with Growave. As Joe says, I've got a lot of experience in the world of B2B. For those of you not aware of kind of how Velstar, Velstar acquired a business last year called 9XB as they look to expand into the kind of B2B arena. 9XB were a B2B specialist e-commerce agency, and I'd worked with 9XB for 14 and a half years before it kind of merged into the Velstar business last year. So kind of 15 years of experience working in B2B, but I've got before that another 10 years working in digital as well. So yeah, kind of quite archaic, I think, in the world of digital e-commerce, but more recently, obviously, around B2B. In my private life, I enjoy running and golf, and a kind of family man. So yeah, that's me.
Nice. Thank you so much for that, Simon. Appreciate that background. What's your handicap in golf?
I'd say my golf clubs. I'll have to be honest. My handicap is 15, so I can play to a certain standard. Not as good as some of my pals, but I am.
No, that's great. That's very good. That's very good. And okay, cool. Well, thank you for that background and everything, Simon. And to caveat that, we're very excited about the partnership that we're building globally with Velstar. So I just want to preface that. I think there's so much opportunity and so many cool projects that you're going to touch on, throughout this. So thank you for that. And last but not least, Jason Greenwood.
Hey, thanks guys for jumping on this call with us today. Thanks, Joe, for organizing and sort of leading the charge here through Growave. You and I have been friends for a long time. Obviously, famously, I built my career actually down in the ANZ region. And so I'm originally from Southern California, born and raised, moved to New Zealand in my early 20s, lived there for almost 30 years. Now live in Mexico, been living here for almost 3 years. And I'm a 25-year e-commerce veteran. And for the last 4.5 years, I've built and run my own B2B e-commerce consultancy called Greenwood Consulting. I'm also the host and the producer of the E-commerce Edge podcast with 511 episodes released to date about all facets of e-commerce. And we release one dedicated B2B episode per week on a Wednesday, and we're nearly at 100 episodes of B2B specific episodes to date. So I love working in the B2B e-commerce space. For the first sort of half, 3/4 of my career, I was really heavily focused on B2C and D2C, but latterly and certainly in my consultancy, I'm fully focused on manufacturers and distributors, and it's a great place to be.
Yeah, thank you so much for that by way of background. And it's interesting with our friendship. I feel like there's so many little connections with all of those locations you touched on. But I think, specifically in the realm of what we're talking about today, I'm super excited because I know you're across so many different facets of B2B. So I'm really excited for what the audience can garner from that, in terms of not just on a merchant perspective, but some of the SaaS side of it. I know you're involved in that. So yeah, super excited. Once again, thank you so much, gentlemen, for jumping on and being a part of this. Growave, I'll just give a quick by way of background for this. We have 15,000 customers globally. We mainly work on a B2C or D2C kind of e-commerce space, but we're seeing a lot of growth and appetite in the B2B space. So this is something that we're super keen to delve into, especially with the experts on this call. But the main reason that we do these webinars is so that the audience can get a lot of value from our partners and the various partners we have in the ecosystem. So I'm very excited for this. As I said, I think this is number 5. We're going to keep these rolling and sort of try and do one every 4 to 6 weeks. Jason, when you mentioned the podcast, I think, that's so amazing to hear how many episodes you've done. And as you know, we're launching the Growave podcast in the next coming weeks. So very excited to have each of everyone here as a guest on that in the coming weeks and months as well. So thank you all so much for joining. I'm going to dive straight into the questions now. Sorry, I should have had this on here. See, this is why a podcast will be easier, because I can just ramble and talk without slides. But thank you all again for joining, as you've heard from all of the speakers introducing themselves. So gonna go into this in terms of, I think everyone's touched on this initially, kind of in their intros and by way of background and everything like that. But it's super clear that, B2B is evolving, and it has evolved, and it continues to evolve. And it's been evolving over the years, and it's really reached, I think, this really critical sort of juncture. I don't think I'm wrong in saying that. Obviously you've got Shopify investing so much in this space, in a space where they were really strictly, D2C and B2C. So this is a two-pronged kind of question here. So I'll ask the question, I'll frame it to the speaker, and then I'm going to go into the statistic as well. So based upon what we said around this evolution, what sort of opportunities have presented themselves in recent years, and what sort of potential, whether you see that as growth statistics or just opportunities for business, or even revenue figures, if any of you know them. And then in terms of when you answer this question, can you speak on the strategic significance of B2B and compare the advantages of B2C and D2C? So I'll jump quickly into the statistic, and then I'm going to go right back into that order that we introduced the speakers to. So the B2B industry is projected to grow by 14.1% over the next 5 years to 43.4 trillion. Yes, trillion. Usually when you hear those numbers, it's usually a government spending that much money. So when we're hearing about this, it's nice to hear. Fueled primarily by technological advances, industry trends, and the expansion of B2B infrastructure. So on that note, Derek, and in terms of the way I frame that question, I'll put it to you first.
Yeah, so let's be honest here. There are a ton of opportunities in B2B, but I could probably talk for 30 minutes on all of the opportunities and get into detail, but I'm going to actually hone in on really two key areas of opportunities. And really, we're really starting to see a huge digital transformation of a lot of legacy industries. Jason talked about manufacturing earlier. We talk about logistics, we talk about construction. These industries are modernizing really quickly, and to survive, like, they have to be modern. And so there's so much green grass for that. And there's so much opportunity to really get those legacy industries and those companies that are a part of those legacy industries, like, just current and with the times and what's going on. So there's a huge demand for that. And when you think of that, because that demand is there, price doesn't become as much of a concern, right? I mean, because they're going to need to do this to be able to evolve and be able to survive. And so another thing too is, like, we know that business is very global now as well. And with global business, and selling to companies that, sell B2B as well, like, it's important that they're able to have transactions and financial payments happen cross-border, right? So you're starting to see a lot of technological advances in payment systems and how streamlined they are. And so those are really kind of like the two big areas of opportunity that I've at least identified. And then, like, when you think of it from the perspective of, like, why is B2B such like a strategic gold mine, I guess you could say. Well, look, at the end of the day, it's going to be much harder to sell into B2B because you have to have a very specific strategy and a pain and a roadmap and a playbook. But the thing is that when you acquire a customer like this, or you're working to sell to a B2B focused type of company, then you're going to have, like, higher lifetime value for that customer as well. And there's just so much room for differentiation for, you know, the different types of solutions that are out there to solve a lot of the problems that are still prevalent in a lot of these like industries that I was talking about. So that's kind of
Yeah.
my 2 cents on it. So
No, I think there's some really good insights there. And I think I just wanted to add to, you know, the point that you're making towards the end about when you're selling into that B2B kind of thing, and I'm sure Jason and Simon will touch on this too. There's kind of like this inherent loyalty that comes with that I think is very different to D2C. And it's something, you know, from a, you know, being a part of our tool is loyalty. That really fascinates me because there's this underlying, hey, if I get involved with you on a B2B basis, you know, you're still expecting the same level of service and quality, and even probably sometimes more so personalization. But there's this inherent component of loyalty which fascinates me. So yeah, I agree to all of those points. Thank you for sharing that, Derek. Simon, what are your thoughts around this?
Yeah, it's interesting, and there's some good stuff that Derek said there, which is kind of all kind of relevant. I suppose what I take from this is that B2B is quite a traditional kind of stage, probably the wrong word, but quite a traditional old school way of doing stuff traditionally. And it's kind of quite behind the curve compared to kind of B2C and D2C. But what we're now seeing, I think, is that there's a younger generation of people coming into business now who are more tech savvy, that expect to be able to use technology to do things in their kind of everyday working life. Customer expectations are changing as well. And obviously technology has come on at leaps and bounds over the last few years. I think a lot of B2B businesses traditionally would have had things like archaic ERP systems inside their physical locations and their buildings, and now we're moving more towards SaaS-based technology and things like that. Actually getting these systems to talk to each other becomes easier, so that you can get your web store and your front end of your B2B portal to talk to your internal system. So I think technology is really now kind of leveraging what we can do from a B2B perspective. But I think it's just a cultural shift as well with people and with customer expectations. That's the big thing for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you for that, Simon. That's some really good insights. I think you touched on a very good point there around expectations. And I think expectations that I may traditionally think about on a B2C or D2C front are like more based around that, you know, delivery times and the shopping experience and all of those sorts of things. But to my point I was discussing earlier with Derek, I think, you know, that inherent loyalty isn't going to be there if it's not an amazing experience too. So it's kind of like leveraging all of this technology in a way that's also personalized and feels similar to the, you know, the old school way of doing it, where you're shaking someone's hand, meeting them face to face, and forming this long-term B2B relationship. So no, I appreciate those insights. Jason, what do you think here, mate? I know you're itching at the bit to chat to this, but I'd love to get your thoughts here, based around, you know, what we've kind of added to this and your thoughts on this.
Yeah, from my perspective, what I see is three great catalysts for B2B growth, both up till now since COVID, and then up until 2030. Most of these statistics in terms of projections of growth run all the way up to about 2030. And depending on the research you follow, and depending on who's producing the research, the growth in B2B is projected to be about 8 to 10x what the growth of B2C and D2C e-commerce is going to be between now and 2030. Well, what are the catalysts? Okay, what is driving this? There's three primary catalysts that I've identified. One is COVID. So I was working agency side when COVID hit, and kind of every single project that we had mid-flight in the beginning, I think it was early 2020, pretty much every single one of those projects went on hold because people didn't know what was going to happen. They thought the whole world was going to come to an end. Then within 2 months, all those projects and many more came on stream because everybody realized, holy crap, everybody's going to be buying online, and they're only going to be buying online or mostly be buying online, except for essential items. And therefore, we really have to up our game. And the vast majority of B2B businesses, manufacturers, distributors, and wholesalers, at that time, they didn't offer any meaningful form of e-commerce or buying portal, right? And they realized during that time, they were vulnerable to any kind of disruption or situation where field sales couldn't get out and meet with customers. They couldn't physically knock on doors. They couldn't take people to ball games. They couldn't take people to boozy lunches on a Friday. They couldn't schmooze. They couldn't do the traditional in-person relationship building and client acquisition that they had historically done. And they realized, geez, if we don't have digital routes to market, we are seriously screwed. If we can't digitally acquire customers in the future, we are seriously screwed, right? It's not scalable. There's going to be disruptions to market. There's going to be disruptions to economies. There's probably going to be future pandemics. And so this was the first great catalyst, was B2B businesses realizing we can no longer rely on field sales actually knocking on doors and making regular call cycles with our customers to drive revenue and land and expand. That's the first thing. Second catalyst was really when we look at the second great catalyst, we see that the buying demographic has radically changed. Forrester, at the end of last year, the end of 2024, released a report that by the end of 2023, 71% of US B2B buyers were now millennials and Gen Z, right? So we now have the lion's share of B2B buyers in the US are digital natives, which means that the old ways of doing things, the old boys club of backroom deals and shaking hands and getting credit accounts and finding suppliers because they found you and going to trade shows and everything else, that old way of doing things is rapidly dying a fast death, right? These people, these millennials and Gen Z, when they're looking for a new supplier, they're not waiting for someone to come and knock on their door. They're Googling. They're going to ChatGPT. They're saying, manufacturer widget X, supplier widget X, wholesaler widget X, distributor widget X. So they're starting their supplier search online, right? And so this has completely changed the way B2Bs have to be able to sell. They have to be able to sell online. They have to be able to market online. They have to be able to acquire customers online, and have to be able to retain customers digitally. This is a new imperative, and this is being driven by the evolution of the buyer, not the seller. So the sellers now have a gun to their head, unlike they've ever had before, in that they have to adapt to the buyer expectations of a digital generation. The final catalyst is multimodal AI. And what multimodal AI is now enabling, it's now enabling massively high ROI on digital investments by not requiring customers to change their buying habits, patterns, or channels to leverage and benefit from digital technology. And I'll just give you one example. So there's a technology out there, and there's a few B2B e-commerce platforms that also have versions of this technology in their platform. But there is a platform out there, and what it does is it basically sits between your commerce system and the customer, meaning that in the B2B world, a lot of purchases are made via email, WhatsApp, Slack, and Teams. So customers will communicate with their account manager, their BDR, their SDR, customer service, whatever it is, and they will download a PDF of their order, their PO from their ERP, or a CSV of their PO from their ERP, and they'll email it off to their account manager, and their account manager will manually key that into the ERP or the WMS for fulfillment. That is so labor intensive, and it really doesn't add any value to the customer, and it doesn't add any value to the account manager or the commission sales rep either. So what this new multimodal AI does, and Motivate is one of these pieces of middleware, but again, it's built into multiple platforms today. We can now receive these emails and have multimodal AI extract the order information out of the PDF, automatically map it directly into the commerce system as if the customer had logged into the portal and placed the order themselves. Wow. And it gets logged against their account. It gets ordered as on their credit account and everything else. And this can happen through WhatsApp, Slack, Teams. And the same goes for quote requests. The same goes for inventory requests, pricing requests. All these channels now effectively become headless e-commerce channels for B2B. And these are the three primary catalysts I'm seeing. And with the advent of this new technology and all of this latest technology, this automatic Salesforce automation, this has really only matured in the last 6 months. So these are the three big catalysts I'm witnessing.
That's fascinating, Jason. It
So
reminds me of
huge.
kind of when you hear, about when you used to hear about businesses still using fax. Now it's kind of going to be like, oh, you're still using phone and email, and you're not using an AI agent to manage things. That's I knew I would learn a lot, but yeah, that's fascinating to me. I'm sure we'll dig into this a little bit later, but I'll be curious, sort of whether we cover that here or offline, but the adoption rate of that kind of technology, because that to me, it makes so much sense, but it's kind of like the changing of behavior that has to happen from that kind of, senior level. But to your point, a lot of the B2B buyers are now, much younger than probably what used to be. So, and native technology first. So fascinating. Okay, cool.
Joe, can I just add something to that?
Absolutely. Yep.
It's fascinating listening to that, Jason. And I think what we see with some of our customers and their buyers is that these B2B buyers are very busy people, often on the shop floor doing their jobs during the day. So they need a really quick and easy way of placing orders. So all of this stuff around AI or punching orders in or quick order pads, whatever it might be, is just saving them so much time. And that's why they're now starting to embrace digital and not do the traditional things like going into a branch or ringing their account manager or sending a fax or an email or whatever it was that they were doing before.
Yeah.
Well, and the benefit of multimodal AI is that in the B2B world, and I see this all the time when I go in and I start scoping a solution or I do discovery with my merchant clients. I was speaking to a sales team recently, and when we were going through discovery, literally the sales manager showed me, he said, I want to show you the way that, because some of our customers, they are really not tech savvy at all. He said, I'm going to show you an image. And he held it up on his phone in front of the camera. And he said, this is the kind of order I received from some of my customers. So he had a customer who had a PO that was in a spreadsheet. The customer didn't understand how to attach the Excel file to the email to send to his account manager. So what did he do? He pulled up the spreadsheet on his screen. He took a photo on his phone of his screen of the PO, of the order, of the spreadsheet, and then he sent it to his account manager on WhatsApp and said, can you please place this order for me? So this is the kind of stuff that we're dealing with. And the great thing about multimodal AI is it can take those types of image attachments, it can extract the data out of those image attachments, and it can map it directly into the commerce system completely natively. And this is the change that we're seeing in the industry.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Huge. It's crazy.
Fascinating. Okay, so coming into, we covered a lot on that. I'm still kind of blown away and catching my words, if I'm honest. But if we look at this kind of next area and angle, I think we need, obviously, from everything we're hearing, it's such a change in behavior. Like you just gave a perfect example of that, Jason. So everything, it has to be really strategic, multiple levels of decision makers, being really, dynamic and really focused on long-term reliability, right? Because we talk about those technologies, but if those technologies aren't in place, it's not going to be a good time. And then that person whose behavior you're trying to change is going to say, well, hold up, this is why I do it my way, right? So all of those things are, really important when, marketing to decision makers in B2B. So a couple of points here. I know I touched on this at the very start. This is really exciting for me, and I'm excited to sort of learn, each of your thoughts on this. But can you talk to the importance of loyalty and retention in B2B and speak on the typical length of a relationship in B2B, whether it's, kind of in the context we're talking about or not? How common are partnerships in sort of this B2B space, co-marketing, joint ventures, all of those sorts of things? And how does that contrast to the D2C and B2B? How is that contrast between the two? And then I'm just going to quickly touch on, and Simon, I'll get you to start on this, mate. Just quickly, I'll touch on this statistic. the B2B market is valued at 25.6 trillion compared to the 5.5 trillion B2C market. Jason's probably going to tell me those figures have grown already, but that's where it's at from our statistics. Comparison that is driven by high value transactions, because when we look at D2C, we have a lot of merchants that are selling low ticket items at a high volume, right? But I imagine in B2B you can sometimes get this really high volume and high ticket price, and I'm assuming that if you can do little tweaks on a B2B site that increase AOV, then it's astronomical to a company's bottom line. So tell me a little bit about this comparison. Talk to the importance of these kind of things, and tell me a little bit about what you see around partnerships in this space, Simon.
Yeah, good. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think to answer the first point, I think it is hugely important. I think if you look in the more, again, using the term I used before, in the more traditional B2B world, there were things like, or there are still things around, like we call them rebate schemes or loyalty programs, but it's very different to what it is in the kind of B2C world. I think there are ways in which it's done that I think B2B customers are very loyal to suppliers if certain things are fulfilled. And I think that's not always about price, we see with a lot of our customers. So that can be, I think the biggest things, and this kind of ties in, I think, with that is if loyalty comes from more than just kind of using them as the place to go to purchase your goods each time, each week, each month, whenever that might be. I think a lot of it is around stock availability, how quickly we can get it, when I can see my deliveries. So when I know when things are going to be delivered into my store or my distribution warehouse or whatever it is. And I think if you get those things right, then I think loyalty is sticky, I think, in the world of B2B. But then added to that by introducing loyalty schemes and rebate schemes, and I think that adds that extra level of kind of stickiness, I think, for those customers to stay loyal. But I think there is a greater level of loyalty in the B2B world than there certainly is in the B2C world, where I don't know, if you're shopping for a fashion item and you look at a website and it's not there, oh, I'll just move to the next one, I'll move on. I think in the world of B2B, it's more difficult to make those switches unless you're in an industry that's got multiple suppliers, if that kind of makes sense. So yeah, I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Simon. I just have one point to add to that. It's interesting you say that because, we had I say I don't have B2B experience, but I think I do, but mainly, back in my agency days in Australia, and we worked with, one of the we work with the largest, beef company in Australia, and we work with the largest seafood company. But they were B2B because they were distributing through, Woolworths, Coles, all of the Aldi, all of the sort of supermarket retailers. And it's interesting because, we were kind of digitizing their business, definitely not on a B2B front, but more of if someone is an end user and they go looking for this company, what is the digital perception of that company? What messaging are they putting out there? Because they didn't even have websites. It would just redirect to a very corporate site, even for the, steak brands that people were sort of selling. And I think to that point, Simon, it's like there is a really good loyalty there, but they built that from that customer experience. So it's like but the customer experience might be with the buyer at that organizations, but there's still a very large focus on the things that are important in D2C. We were talking about delivery and the overall sort of experience of shopping with a particular D2C brand. So it's very good points you mentioned there. Jason, I'm going to pass over to you on this one if you want to talk to this a little bit and sort of add to what Simon and I both covered off there.
Totally. I always try to go back to catalysts. So what are the catalysts for loyalty in B2B? And again, I see three primary catalysts for loyalty in B2B. The first is the challenge of becoming a trade account holder with most manufacturers or distributors. The barrier to entry is very high, meaning you got to apply for a credit account, you got to be applied terms, you have to be assigned a credit limit, that you have to have, you know, all your payment terms and all your payment methods established, whether it's wire transfer, whether it's business credit card, whether it's whatever it is. Plus, you have the whole application process. You have a scenario where in some cases there's single sourcing distribution for certain products, certain brands, certain regions, certain catchments. The buyer approval process is lengthy and painful. There's MOQs applied, usually either at a customer account level or a SKU level or both. You've got buying increments that apply. You have, you know, and in many cases, especially for wholesale distribution, their credit terms are actually a UVP or a USP for them. So I was working with a materials, a clothing materials supplier for the garment manufacturing industry, and they were supplying the raw material, the fabric, as a distributor of fabric into these manufacturing accounts. And they gave, by default, 120-day credit terms to their customers. Now, that's kind of unheard of, even in B2B. It's pretty, like 30 to 60 days is pretty normal, but, you know, 90 days maybe at the outside, but to give 120-day credit. Now, the reason why that was a unique UVP for them was because their customers had to receive the fabric, they had to manufacture the goods, they had to get them into their retailers' hands, the goods had to be sold before they got paid. Therefore, that 120-day spread of credit allowed them to actually turn that into revenue that they could then pay the supplier for. So that was a unique value proposition. So you think those customers, you know, even if they're slightly high on price, do you think they're going to go anywhere else that doesn't give them at least 120 days worth of credit? No. Okay. So that's the first layer of stickiness that's usually brought into these relationships. The second one is that I'm seeing a much, much higher level of supply chain or willingness to share supply chain information all the way from end B2B consumer up through distribution and up through manufacturer. And what I mean by that is, okay, maybe me as a distributor, maybe I'll set a min-max level in my warehouse of this product, this SKU. I want to always have a minimum of this amount of this product in stock. Well, if I share that information with my manufacturing partner, my manufacturing supplier, and I say, here's my min-max level, and daily, I'm going to send you my current inventory level so that you can just auto replenish. When I drop below the minimum level, I want you to automatically replenish me up to that max level that I've set in my ERP. So that's kind of like the B2B version of a subscription or a B2B version of an auto replenish. So the willingness to share supply chain data up and down the B2B supply chain for efficient transmission and auto replenishment of orders so that nobody runs out of stock across the supply chain and everything kind of happens more of a just-in-time scenario, that creates a level of stickiness. Because once you have those relationships established, once you've got those integrations established between my system and your system, that becomes really hard to replicate, you know, across 5 additional suppliers. The final catalyst that I'm seeing is the digital services layer. So even if a B2B customer continues to transact with you in the way that they always have, meaning those traditional sales channels, ringing up the sales rep or emailing the sales rep or whatever it might be, there's a whole layer of digital services that particularly millennials and Gen Z expect to be able to get through a portal, even if they transact in another way. And by that, I mean, they expect to be able to log in and see what SKUs they have available to them, what price they're going to pay for it, what MOQs are going to be applied to them, where is it available, how quick can you get it to me, can I make a quote request digitally, can I track my orders digitally, can I do all these other things digitally, even if the transaction happens somewhere else. And once you've got a whole bunch of that transactional data and that historical data in that digital services layer, you're loath to give that away by going with another supplier. So those are the 3 elements of stickiness that are pretty common in the B2B world.
Yeah, that's interesting, Jason. That first one that you discussed, it sounds like there's an opportunity almost for like a afterpay, but specifically for B2B,
It already
right?
exists. Already exists.
So, okay, all right,
there are payment
Big
gateway
mix up.
vendors like Hokoto and Balance and other B2B specific payment service providers that effectively offer basically a BNPL experience, but for B2B. So they're effectively the one providing the trade credit instead of the vendor providing the trade credit. They, as the middleman, are effectively providing the trade credit on their behalf.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Fascinating. Okay, cool. Derek, I'm going to pass on to you on this one.
Yeah, for
What are your
sure.
thoughts here?
So, look, you guys all covered a lot of great points, but I believe that the second part of the question is like, how common are partnerships, namely co-marketing and joint ventures, if I'm not mistaken, right, Joe? I think you did ask
Yep.
that question earlier. So I kind of wanted to go
Yep.
into that a little bit.
Absolutely.
I mean, the truth of the matter is like when you're going to market, you know, two companies collaborating together on content, webinars, white papers, events, ultimately the ability to open up like shared audiences to reduce like marketing costs, to be able to get in front of these different types of companies is, it's almost better when you're working alongside companies that are also selling B2B as well. So obviously, you know, from a co-marketing perspective, much less cost and much more return on what you're investing into. And then I think there's a lot more opportunity to just like strategically go to market together, you know, from a technology perspective as well, or from a company perspective, to kind of combine resources together to come to market with a solution. So that's kind of the lens that
Absolutely.
I was looking at it from, you know, from a partnerships perspective.
Yeah,
With
no,
B2B.
and that's a great point. I mean, it really does touch on the power of partnerships. It's transferable, you know, as we know, to sort of everything. But I think you touched on some really good points there, Derek, particularly around, you know, the softwares that are, you know, kind of enabling each other and everything like that. And to Jason's point, like even the BNPL for B2B, right? Like that is going to be very complementary to someone who's, you know, got the ERP system or the system that's talking between the website, the POS, and the ERP. So absolutely, that's all very good points.
Also,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt, Joe.
Yeah.
I would like to back up what Derek is saying with real firsthand experience. So I don't just consult to merchants. I also consult to SIs in the B2B space and B2B platform vendors in the space. And I am constantly making connections between, say, for example, platform vendors and SIs to help them have a joint go-to-market play together. And even when I go to conferences and events, like I'm going to be at B2B Online Chicago at the end of this month, and every single, and Derek, this just validates 100% what you just said. There is not one single after party, private invite only event, little, you know, there's not anything that's surrounding this event that is one single vendor or partner only. Every single one of those events and after parties are hosted by a combination of partners. Like I'm thinking of the boat cruise down the center of the city as one of the parties. So it's big commerce, it's trade centric, it's I think HawkSearch and like 4 or 5 other, you know, complementary non-competing partners that are jointly running these events together. That reduces their cost, obviously, because they can split the cost. It also gets them that they can go to market with a joint value prop in terms of, okay, here's what we can offer to you together, and here's our out-of-the-box technical integrations that make this very easy for you to deploy in combination with each other. Oh, and by the way, here's SI partners that are partners with all of us that know our technology inside and out and can help you make sure you get this implemented safely, securely, quickly, and efficiently. So to your point, this is absolutely the direction B2B has to go, because marketing in the B2B space is so expensive. Go-to-market is so expensive. Customer acquisition is so expensive that partnership and being able to tap into the distribution of each of those unique partners and be able to cross-pollinate each other's audiences, massively important.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting too, because it's almost like it's not like it's a nice to have, it's like a necessity. And what I'm even seeing too is like you talked a lot about like the, you know, the joint combining of different companies and running these events, but it's not just about the events, it's also like at the level of how the technology actually plays with one another for the own customer experience as well, right? Like I'm starting to find that it's not just about who throws the best party, it's about do the solutions actually pair and work together and directly impact that customer experience, which is like a lot of what we talked about as well. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So I'm going to just in the interest of time, because we want to leave a little bit of time for questions at the very, very end. This one I'm going to try and get everyone to kind of just add, this is a very robust question. So if everyone can kind of add as I go through, and work through this order, what are the two things? So let me rephrase the question first. B2B operations are recognized as robust long-term strategies that can help businesses expand at an industry level. And I think it's very clear to see from what we were talking about throughout these other questions and what we've discussed on here is if you're a B2B industry leader, you are going to absolutely crush it. So, you know, if there's probably some people who are watching this or who are going to be watching this who are thinking, okay, I haven't started with any of this, or I'm very early days on this, or there's so many places I could go with this. Where do I even start? So I'm going to rephrase this question a little bit, and I'm going to get each of you to give 2 points as to what you think the ultimate B2B GTM strategy looks like, or what should be done first, or how that should look. And then I would love to know, you know, an example that you've seen of someone who has started kind of in that early stage and is now relatively mature in this space. You don't have to name names if you don't want to, but so essentially 2 key points and a good example. And in order, Jason, you haven't had one first yet, so I'm going to go to you first. Jason, let's dive into this.
Sure. Look, I think it differs a little bit if you're a tech vendor or a platform vendor, you're an SI, you're an investor in B2B, or a consultant, you're an e-commerce consultant, and you want to add maybe a B2B practice. There's slightly different.
Sorry,
impacts.
I apologize. Let me rephrase this then. Let's think of this from a B2B merchant's perspective. Like, where should they start? What are the 2 main things that they should initially look at?
Sure.
To be able to get underway that will set them up for success long term.
Totally. I'm going to go back to one that I see most B2B merchants making the same mistake over and over and over and over again. When I first start consulting to them, the first question I usually ask is, have you asked your customers, have you created a safe space to ask your customers the 1, 2, 3 things that they love about doing business with you, and the 1, 2, 3 things they hate or loathe about doing business with you? What are the things that are really challenging about communicating with you, about spending money with you, about getting serviced by you? What are the things? And sometimes they're small things. Like, for example, I was leading the conversation on behalf of one of my merchant clients with one of their customers, because they don't want to put their account manager on the phone with that customer, because they got to have an ongoing relationship. So oftentimes they're gonna hold back. The customer is gonna hold back on where it isn't working for them, because then the next day they gotta place an order with their account manager, and so they're afraid of hurting that relationship by being honest. And so someone like me, as a third party, an impartial third party, I can come in and create that safe space for the customer to be honest. And one of the customers said, look, we have a real problem ordering from you because we have zero transparency over when containers of goods are going to hit our receiving team. And so when we have containers of goods coming in, I have to pre-schedule that with my receipting team, so that we have room on the dock, we have room in the yard. I have a team to receipt the goods, to check the goods, to get them loaded into our pallet racking in the warehouse. But with you, I have no idea when the stuff is going to hit me. And so oftentimes when it gets to me, I can't even make it available to my customers for 2 or 3 days after that, because it has to sit in the yard, because my receiving team doesn't have any time to receipt your orders, right? So if I had a portal where I could log in and I could track my order from the time it leaves your warehouse to the time it's going to hit my warehouse with an estimated ETA time of arrival, that would change our life in terms of how we engage with you. So it's sometimes just like, it sounds so simple. Like in the B2C and D2C world, not have parcel tracking would be an unforgivable sin.
Yeah.
Right. But in the B2B world,
you would not make it past $1 million in rev if you didn't have that. Yeah.
But in the B2B world, it's just not that common. It's like, well, it's on the ship, or it's on the plane, or it's whatever. You'll get it when you get it. Well, okay, we've shipped it. Maybe we notify you you've shipped it or whatever. But it's little things like that can make this massively beneficial for your customers. And so I think whenever a B2B business, they go into scoping a new solution through their lens, meaning what's going to make me more efficient, what's going to make me more profitable, what's going to allow me to be more scalable, not what is going to allow my customers to be more efficient. How can I cut their procurement costs with me by 1, 2, 3%? Because that's meaningful margin I'm able to put into their back pocket. But if you never ask the question, you'll never know, and you'll be scoping in the dark. So that's the first thing. The second
I
thing
love that.
is
Yep.
executive buy-in. If you don't have that, you are dead in the water. I don't care whether you hire the most shit hot CDO, head of digital, head of ecom. They could be the most experienced person in the world, but they are going to instantly get frustrated if they are not empowered and enabled from the highest levels of the business. And if this doesn't become a senior level, board level, CXO level mandate in the business, then it will not get funded. It will not get resourced. It will not get, enabled properly in the business. And you will just be banging your head against a wall constantly, because this will be a second or third order priority in the business instead of a first order priority. Those are the two big things for me.
No, that's spot on. And I think that's, yeah, that's so interesting. And it's interesting because, B2B and D2C are different, but there are still some very, very common threads there, right? Like, I think that the theme that keeps coming up over and over again is like customer journey. Like customer journey just keeps coming up there. So I think I'll quickly throw my 2 cents in before someone else takes it and say my one thing would be mapping out that customer journey, to your point, Jason. I think mapping out what that ideal customer journey looks like and what pieces are missing of that and how can you fill in those pieces and make it super effective. Okay, cool. I'm gonna pass. Derek, you haven't gone second yet, so I'm gonna pass to you.
Yeah.
What's your pieces of advice here?
Well, Jason, I mean, you took the words out of my mouth on really kind of dialing in and looking at customer journey and experience. And a lot of what I'm hearing is like business efficiency and like operations. You know what I mean? To like really make sure that that customer experience is streamlined, because ultimately at the end of the day, the retention of those merchants is so critical to just keep you current with the times and not lose some of those customers that you have. But thinking outside of that, right? We talked a lot about early on about like the fact that the buying profile of like of who is buying from a B2B merchant is a lot different as well, right? So you got to start thinking about, okay, how are we going to market and how are we acquiring new customers? And so that really comes down to really understanding who your ideal customer profile is and like who it is that you're selling to, and having a go-to-market story of like who you guys are for your own sales and marketing team to like help for your own future relationships that you are going to need to develop to continue to stay relevant, because the profile of who's going to be purchasing out there is going to be a little bit different. So you don't want to get left behind. So I can cover so many other things, but I really think dialing that in and honing that in as a B2B merchant is really important. And then the second part of that is like your strategy, like your channel strategy and how you're going to reach that audience of like who those buyers are going to be. That takes a lot of like effort and work. And so leaning on consultants to help with that is going to be a huge part of that. But it's more of like a forward thinking of like, we need to start doing this and really dialing this in and how we're kind of known and how we're positioned so we remain relevant. That's my
Absolutely.
2 cents.
Yeah, no, really, really, really good points there. And I think, I I agree with that sentiment so much, Derek, because we end up at this same point at almost every single one of these webinars, and it's like hire an expert in this because it is very, you can either succeed or fail very quickly. And I think having, the right experts in place, like the Velstars and the GC consultings on your side, is very, very important because, this, as we've discussed, there's some very, very fine intricacies around these sorts of things. And when you're in a D2C environment and you make a spelling mistake on a website, that can be one thing. But when you're in a B2B environment and you make a pricing error or something like that, that can tank a business. So yeah, it's very interesting. I'd love to do a part 2 of this, and maybe we can outline some horror stories. But okay, cool. Simon, I'm gonna pass the last part of this question to you just because of timing. Give me a really good example of a merchant that you've kind of seen who's really like came into this B2B journey and executed well, and sort of give me a couple of like key little bits of, you know, wisdom for the audience
Yeah.
about how they did that? Like, what were some of the key strategic things, little nuggets of wisdom that the audience can get from this?
Yeah, no, I can do that. Just before I do that, I want to echo actually what Jason said very quickly because I'm conscious of time. But that
Yeah,
whole piece around getting the business that you're talking to talk to their customers and ask them what they want from a B2B portal is the single most important thing, I think, of all of this. We go into scoping and discovery projects. The merchants come to us and they say, we need this portal, we need to be able to trade online. And then when they ask those customers what they want from a portal, they say things like, what stock have you got? Where's my delivery tracking, my real-time tracking of my delivery? What accounts and invoices can I see? And then online ordering is actually not bottom, but it's further down the list in terms of priorities. So I think it's absolutely crucial that you do ask your customers what they want to from a digital services perspective from a portal. And that ties in
absolutely.
quite nicely. Sorry, go on, Joe.
No, I was just going to say absolutely. Like but it is, you know, both of you are incredibly right on this, Simon and Jason. It's like everyone's guilty of this who works in any business. I think it's like, what do we want? Like, what do we want out of this? Like, what, you know, and I think slowing down for that minute, finding your best customers and your advocates, and maybe even some that have given you a bad review or been really candid, going to them and finding that out. And I also think, you know, because we experience this in D2C so much with reviews, it's a really good experience to know that you're being listened to, and to know that a company actually wants to solve your problems and wants to put a solution in place because of the feedback you've given. So going back to tying this all into a loyalty component, how else can you get a more loyal customer than actually listening to them and doing right by them? So yeah, amazing points there, gentlemen.
And that just to finish off then, that ties in with this kind of the most effective approaches is we've got a client that we've worked with for quite a few years now. They're a builder's merchant, so traditional builder's merchant with a number of branches in the northeast of England. And they came to us and they said, right, we want to get our trade customers on engaging with us online. At the minute, I think about 90% of their orders coming through were just guest checkout. So DIY enthusiasts, homeowners wanting to do the kind of landscaping and gardening stuff and projects, but actually their main business is tradesmen. So what we tried to do with them was think, right, how can we actually get, if we just do trade pricing online, that's not going to get those tradesmen logging in and placing their orders online, because they want to go in their van to the branch and have a cup of tea with the branch manager and talk to them and load the van up and go do their goods. So the angle we took with them was creating like a self-serve digital services portal where they could view all their invoices and their statements, and they could pay their account balance online. So they're busy trading, doing the building work during the day, but when they get home on an evening and they need to sort their invoicing, their admin out, they can do it now, because actually they don't need to be going into a branch to do it or ringing them up to speak to credit control. They can do it all through the online portal. So this actually transformed their split between how many B2C or D2C customers were using the website to how many of their trade customers, was by just introducing these features, which brings in loyalty and stickiness and keeping those customers more loyal. And then things like building up quotes and then turning those quotes into orders. So we created like a quote builder where you could that the tradesman could be doing a quote for Mrs. Smith, builds that quote up, can place the order and everything like that. So all of that is where we've seen huge success.
Yeah, I
Man,
love that.
that's awesome. I mean, I'll add one more thing, Joe. I know we're coming up on time here, but like I find that awesome how you made it to where you started off with making it, hey, you can just come in here and look at your invoices, but it creates that adoption and that stickiness to maybe lead them to go, okay, I'm going to maybe start doing some of my orders online now instead of always coming in, right? It's like that natural transition that happens, but you kind of have to find like, what is that thing that gets them in the door? I love
What's
that.
the
That's
hook
awesome.
that gets them in?
The hook, yeah.
Awesome. Well, on that note, we've got 2 minutes left. We're unfortunately not going to have time for questions. However, there's a caveat to that because you'll be able to connect with everyone who's been on this call today. So first of all, I just want to quickly thank everyone. And then I'm going to tell everyone what your offers are and how to get in contact with you. So Derek, Justuno, thank you so much for jumping on board. Your offer is founder-led onboarding. Is that correct, Derek?
That is correct. So, talked a little bit about what we do earlier, y'all. Ultimately at the end of the day, if you're a merchant who's selling B2B, identifying your visitors is obviously very important. The people that are coming to your website. That's essentially what our solution does. So we do have a founder-led onboarding offer where we do have a proof of concept period, but if you decide to come on board to Justuno, our founder will actually lead the entire onboarding and setting up your on-site strategy. So that's our offer.
Nice.
And if you guys are interested, scan the QR code or, find my email address, connect with me on LinkedIn. So that's
Awesome. Thank you for that. And that's Derek Booth for anyone who's wondering from Justuno. If you want to connect with Derek on LinkedIn, or as he mentioned, please scan the code. Jason, complimentary consultation for B2B businesses. I know that you've got the podcast. I know that you're very active on LinkedIn. Is that where you want people to reach out and sort of connect with you, mate, for that?
They can find me everywhere, but there's the opportunity if they go to my website. I think that QR code actually takes you just directly to my website. Top left-hand side of the page, 1 hour free initial consult. Your manufacturer, distributor, wholesaler, and you want to chat channel strategy, you want to talk digital strategy, you want to start thinking about how can we move forward, what are the kind of groundwork pieces we need to do to get ready for this digital transformation move inside our business. Feel free to sign up. We'll book it in, we'll get it underway, and we'll have a great conversation. And even if you decide to do nothing off the backside of that, hopefully you'll come away from that initial consultation really well informed as to next steps you can take internally to make some progress.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Jason. Appreciate it, mate. And Simon, what are we offering here with Velstar? Complimentary B2B consultation?
Yeah, similar to what Jason said, really, but it's this is more specifically around your kind of digital transformation and kind of your B2B e-commerce. Essentially, that's kind of what we do as Velstar Enterprise, which is the division that looks after kind of that part. So yeah, just a simple kind of Zoom chat, half an hour on the phone with myself or one of my subject matter experts, really just to kind of find out where you are in your journey and whether we can help with any of the services that we provide.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Simon. And can people catch you on LinkedIn too? You're
Yeah,
fine for people to, yeah.
Yeah, I think that QR code takes them just to my email address, but you can find me on LinkedIn, hook up with me on LinkedIn, and we can have a chat and arrange calls as we need to.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Speakers, my friends, my colleagues. I knew that I would learn a lot, but I'm walking away from this with so much knowledge, and my head is absolutely spinning and wheels are turning. So thank you all so much for joining. Audience and speakers, really appreciate you giving up this time. Just as a quick follow-on note for everyone, anyone watching this, B2B, D2C, whatever sort of place you play in the market, we're offering a 2-month free trial and 20% discount on all plans to new users. If you want to connect with me, feel free to find me, Joe Fox, on LinkedIn. And thank you all so much for joining again. Until next time, see you then. Bye.
Thank you.